The state of Apple user groups. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Insta360 and their new Insta360 X5 flagship camera. Visit store.insta360.com and use the promo code MacVoices to get a free invisible 114cm selfie stick worth $24.99 with a standard package purchase. Limit first 30 standard package purchases only. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. I wanted to provide a short introduction to this particular MacVoices live segment because it's a little bit different. On a recent show, we were running a little bit short on content and had a bit of time to make up, and I've been wanting to try something like this for a while. So, with no pre-announcement or warning, I asked the chat room if there was anything they would like to hear us talk about or provide thoughts on. Much to my surprise, the first thing that came up was Apple user groups. And what I thought would be a 5-10 minute discussion turned into a full-blown MacVoices live segment. You'll hear that here in its entirety. I plan to do more of these ad hoc solicitations and also to offer our Patreon subscribers the option to provide some input on the things we talk about as well. But for now, enjoy this. Everything was completely off the cuff. There are no articles to point to, and there was no preparation. So what you hear is just the opinions and thoughts of each one of our panel members. There's some things there that are a little bit challenging. As a former user group leader, I know I have strong feelings about some of it, but I'll let you decide. With that, let's let the panel do the talking. I do want to try a little experiment here because we've only got 2 articles left and we have a little extra time. And I've been wanting to do this. I should have done it when we were short on topics, but I'd like to ask the chat room, the folks that are in there. We have a decent chat room tonight. Is there anything you'd like to that's in the news or anything you'd like to hear us address before the end of the show? So if there is, throw it in the chat and we'll take it on cold and see what happens. But one of the questions that was offered up in the group is about user groups.
Yep.
User groups. Barry said, "I'm wondering how much longer our local user group can continue. We only had 4 attendees last meeting." And so, Dave, I know you've been a user group leader. Marty, I know you're a user group leader. And also you do the old Mac gang. I'm especially interested to hear what you two think about this, the state of user groups, and has their time come and gone?
You want to start, Marty? Or?
I think so. I think their time has come and gone because we're learning things differently than we used to. And we have access to all of this information, like Jim alluded to earlier, that we didn't used to have. That clubs were a place where people could share information, find some community around it, show new things, and that maybe is not available for everybody else at that point. So it was kind of demos of it. And that population that learns that way and behaves that way and is aging.
Yep.
So at least in my Mac user group, COVID affected the way in which they met. So now they meet online, and the purpose is kind of changed from a learning or knowledge group sharing new information to more of a community support, check-in, and it hasn't really evolved back to a learning platform for people to use. So yeah, I just think Genius Bars, Apple Training, all of those things have kind of made it available for people to have training, and again, the way in which people learn or choose to learn has changed too. So yeah, we talk about it a lot on the old Mac gang.
I'll add. You hit right on the head. the audience has aged. The audience is passing on. I saw a few of those folks leave us under my tenure, which was sad to see. Participation has been a big challenge. Getting people to they want to learn, but a lot of the folks don't have that initiative to want to also contribute, and that kind of affected the way I led the group. Luckily, I had some good I had good folks that were on the board and who were working with me at the time, that we were able to get good speakers. Having the contacts once I met everybody at MacStock and podcasts, all that stuff helped the group flourish a little better, because I would bring in a lot of good speakers. But groups are starting to dwindle down. Like Barry said, there's only 4 people showing up at a group. That's tough. I spoke at the Chicago group last Saturday, and there was 18 people in the chat room, versus speaking at the group in Florida. They had 70 people. So that's quite a drastic difference in the audience. If people were more motivated to honestly, if they were motivated to want to continue on and work on the group and get involved, I think people would get more excited about it. But like Marty said, I'll add the internet. The internet pretty much did in Mac user groups too, at some point. Going back in the days when everybody was sharing their shareware CDs or shareware floppy disks, going a lot of those old times where that's the way technology was. But in this day and age, it's really hard to keep these groups together. There's a few that are doing great, and majority, unfortunately, are not doing so great.
I've apologized, Jeff Gammon. You also were a user group leader, as was I.
Yeah.
And so, but yours was a little bit farther in the past, but still, you were involved in a pretty darn large user group.
Until it wasn't large.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so the group that I was involved in was COMUG, the Colorado Mac user group, which was in Boulder. And
was that the one that met in NEDCAR?
Yep, that's the one.
Did I meet you when I was out there?
We met at
I remember
Mac
meeting
Admins.
No,
right?
The first time I remember meeting you was at the Mac Tech.
Mac Tech, that's what I was thinking.
And we had a long conversation. But I did a presentation at NCAR at COMUG, like 35 years ago, probably. So
that would have been before. Well, actually,
that was before.
I was going to say that's before we would have met, but that's a long time ago now, when COMUG was still a thing. So now I'm trying to remember. Maybe we did meet at COMUG also. I can't remember.
That's what I'm thinking. I don't remember, but maybe we did.
You're probably right. Yep. But the problem that I saw, Marty, Dave, you've both hit on everything that I saw leading to the decline in attendance. And then at the end, Dave, like you said, the problem with finding people who want to take over leadership, that ultimately didn't happen. And so the group shut down. The groups that are still around, because I continue to speak at MUGs, not as many as I used to, because there aren't as many left.
Right.
The problem that I see for a lot of these groups right now is that they are too rigid, and they don't want to change to meet the needs of potential attendees today. I attend a lot of meetup events, online and in person, that are very robust, very active, and they're all in the tech space, and they do great. And they are not doing what mugs are doing. You can go to almost any mug and you will see the exact same format. They start off and they talk about old news, and then they get into whatever else. They might have they'll do some Q&A, and try and explain to someone why they can't open their ClarisWorks files in Mac OS tall trees.
Yeah.
And then
The history of Apple.
Yeah. But I mean, their question is legit. But at the same time, it's stuck way in the past. And then you get to your presentation, and that's it. It's like a cookie cutter event, and it's an outdated way of doing a user group event. And you're not going to get new people to come into your mugs if you're going to do things the way you've always done them, because clearly that's not working anymore.
This edition of Mac Voices is supported by Insta360 and the new Insta360 X5 flagship camera. Visit store.insta360.com and use the promo code MacVoices to get a free invisible 114cm selfie stick worth $24.99 with a standard package purchase. Limit first 30 standard package purchases only. The new Insta360 X5 is, above all else, fun. If you're still using a regular camera, you're missing out. The X5 captures in full 360 degrees at an eye-popping 8K. That means you're not just filming, you're reliving every crazy moment, every unexpected laugh, every behind-the-scenes blooper you didn't even know you caught. And here's the magic trick. You shoot first and decide where to point the camera later. Want to follow your dog down the beach? Zoom in on that epic jump? Or pan over to your friend wiping out on a scooter? It's all there, because with the X5, you never miss a moment. Ever. Plus, Insta360's flow state stabilization means your video looks like it came from a movie, even if you were sprinting, biking, or just being a little too excited at your kid's soccer game. And just for you, visit Insta360.com right now, use the promo code MacVoices with a standard X5 package, and you'll score a free 114cm invisible selfie stick. But only for the first 30 buyers, so don't wait. The Insta360 X5. Capture everything, relive the fun. Thanks to Insta360 for supporting Mac Voices.
I'll add, thinking back to when I started with that group, the iPhone was new. It was 2008, 2009, 2010. I started up an iPhone SIG. I'm trying to remember. I'm having brain cramp. Yeah, the special interest group, SIG. And boy, it was hot. I would get, on average, 25, 30 people come every month because iPhone was the hottest thing right at that time. And everybody wanted an iPhone. And I really, really enjoyed it. And it was a lot of fun. Everybody would lean on me and get information from it. And I would do kind of what I do with my podcast now. I mean, it was the same thing. But as time had gone by, things were starting to, the iPhone was doing its thing, and less and less people were as interested in the group anymore, because that's not the only thing they want to do. They want to have a variety of things to do, and that's where the downfall kind of started. Having links with Apple, having events. I remember we had an event that I got a contact from work with Apple, and he got us into the Michigan Avenue downtown store, and we got to go in to their meeting room and actually have a presentation done for us by an Apple employee, and it was awesome.
That's cool.
I still remember afterwards, Mike Potter and I went and sat along the Chicago River, and we did my podcast. So those are kinds of things that what Apple user groups, Mac user groups did. We did have some good times, but that was getting towards the end. It was starting to slowly just dissipate, and by the time I left, it was near being gone. So it's sad, but like everything, life changes, things change, and you have to adapt to it.
And you've got an aging group, and they have less available income. They're living on sort of a restricted income, so they're not buying new stuff.
Right. So it's point.
And so then they don't want to hear about new stuff, or they want to know, how to get something to run on their iPhone 8.
Yeah, exactly.
And it changes the whole nature of what it is. I tell them that they should just spend their grandchildren's inheritance, buy some new stuff. Grandchildren, the grandchildren don't appreciate it anyways. Have fun while you're still around.
when you and I talked about the Vision Pro at the mug on Saturday, we kept, you said that exact thing to them because the whole group, no one has a Vision Pro, and the one guy I knew would have it is like a tech guy like us, so, and he's younger. I wasn't surprised he had it, but yeah, they get interested, listen to it, but you don't get a lot of questions. Vision Pro is a high end item, it's not probably in their budget. Or they do use iPhones, and a lot of them have always been very interested every time I've spoke, and that was something I was pretty proud of because being able to relay the information and getting the older folks to learn how to use these devices is
and particularly the 16E, David, which is
a perfect phone for them.
Economical, great phone for those folks who are thinking of replacing their old SEs or their 8s or their 10s.
Yeah, I did that twice. I spoke at the Florida group and at the Chicago group, and I felt a good sense of people were really appreciative of the information. But again, it's slowed down. There's just don't have a lot of folks in that audience anymore, unfortunately.
So, go ahead, Jim. Go ahead.
Well, this discussion is, I have, different thoughts about this. For me, user groups were a major component of how I built my business. It was a huge percentage of my marketing, and from 1984 to probably 1990, I probably did over 100 user group presentations. And you could still look at my user registration statistics and see that I have a lot more business in California because I was able to go to more user groups. But I went as far as Chicago and Texas and Colorado, did presentations all over. To me, it seems that by the early 90s, user groups were pretty much, traditional user groups were pretty much played out. So that's where it's kind of weird. People are like, oh yeah, they're recently, no, they've been gone for 30 years. I mean, really? I mean, because they were huge, vibrant things. I went to meetings that had as many as 400 people. And the thing, and I started with user groups before the Mac. I mean, in like 1976, 77, there was a local, microcomputer group that was like MSIs and processor technology and all that kind of stuff. And the thing is, in those days, there was no internet, and there was, people had to get together in person to interact. And this was fast moving, people wanted to share the news and share, share things. And that was the only way they could do it. And the thing was, even before the internet came along, it seemed to me like what happened was things weren't moving quite as fast. Also, there was, things like Macworld built up and, magazines came up. But also a big thing, I think, was at a lot of user groups, what happened was the people that were really, doing stuff started getting frustrated dealing with all the people that wanted to know how to, how can I do things with my iPhone 8, So all the people that were really vibrant, they wandered off because, I'm tired, I want to do something new. Yeah, I don't want to do the same stuff. And so the groups wound up being, like old person's clubs. So not just because everybody was getting older, but also because whether they were old or young, the people that were, really the learners and teachers, they left because they're like, I'm tired of, I want to do stuff. I don't want to, relive old times. But the flip side is, I think what Jeff said, people want communities, they want to meet up, they want to discuss, and, that is still going on. In fact, I would say, just as much, if not more, it's just the venues are different. There's all kinds of online meetups. There's, some of it's video like Zooms and things like that. But, a lot of it is online communities that are no longer, it's not necessarily around meetings, but, YouTube channels. And look at the comments of some, there's communities in YouTube, and there's Discord servers, and, there's communities on Twitter and Mastodon and Discord servers. And I think community is alive and maybe doing stronger than ever. It's just different, and you got to look at different places. So anyway, it was the time in the when in person communities. And the other thing is that like you said, iPhone came out. Like when something's new, there's a lot more. Like so now people they want to talk about 3D printers or maybe drones or Vision Pro or
all that.
we don't. The idea of people are still using Macintoshes, but that is just too general, and it's not fast acting. Like there's what new apps have come out for the Mac. It's sad. I'm a Mac app developer, but I look around. There's no new apps. There's nothing. It's like version 17 of some app, but there's not like, oh, look at this exciting new app. Which, back in the 80s and 90s, there was always like, oh, look, there's exciting new thing. Not here, here's the 23rd, minor revision of an app that came out a couple decades or, several decades ago.
Yep.
So let me throw two things in before we wrap this up. First of all, to Jeff's point, and sort of taking it and turning it on its head, not just are a lot of the meetings by a lot of these groups kind of cookie cutter, they're not doing anything to incent or to advertise themselves. Because I still publish a website called the Mug Center. It's been around since 2000, promoting Apple user groups, and I constantly see them, unfortunately going out of business. But more importantly, I see groups that theoretically are still in business and their websites haven't been updated in months, maybe years. In fact, I just pulled one up, and I'm not going to mention it because I don't want to embarrass anyone. But it's still talking about their meeting place being closed down for COVID.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
and there's another group that used to be a pretty large group. They published their topic the day before the meeting. And it's like, okay, in this world, I don't know about you, but my stuff, I feel like my days and weeks are scheduled out at least, 10 to 12 to 20 days ahead.
Yeah.
So if I don't know what you're presenting, I'm not going to come. It's kind of like, if I don't know what's on TV Saturday night and it's something that really grabs me, I have something else to do.
Right.
But I think that's, kind of, maybe design is not the right word, but, these have become, clubs of insiders. And, they just get together to like shoot, hey, Marty, we shouldn't use a person's name here, but, hey, Joe, how's it going? And, if new people came in and started talking about exciting things, they might not like that. That's not what they want.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too that happened, and Jim, you just said it, you were a developer, you supported user groups, and there were plenty of the larger companies that helped support financially through donations that could be raffled off. And then when the internet came along, they had all new channels to reach people, and they could reach them on their terms, and they didn't have to send people jetting all over the country to present to groups that ranged from 100 to 400. And so, that was another change in the environment that was a significant change. And so, I look back on the user group days with a lot of fondness, and I feel like we had a lot of great meetings, and I met an amazing amount of really great people through it.
Yeah, me too.
But now we do this.
Totally agree. But I think the decline of user groups was pretty much, had happened before the internet. Because the internet, like 1996. Well, from the point of view of a developer, of is it worth it for me to go?
Right.
And by 1992 or 1993, I wouldn't go to a user group that I couldn't drive to. It's like, all right, if it's 45 minutes away, all right, I'll spend one evening, but like I said, I used to go, and even then it was sort of like, is there really going to be more than 5 people?
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And those 5 people, they either already saw my presentation 5 times, or they just didn't care. So this is already, I'd say by 1992 it was like, and I was sad about that because there was so much fun, and like you said,
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
met
they
so
were.
many great people, and it was such a great way to not just get new customers, but interact with people. And you do a presentation, and then they'd come up and ask questions, and you'd get ideas, and uh, so it was great. I loved it,
Yeah.
and probably continued going beyond when it actually made sense. Just
Right.
out of like fondness for the old days. Oh, let's try it again.
Well, I want to just say this. If there are any user group members out there or leaders that you still have a crew together and you don't have anything else to do on Tuesday nights, come and join us in the chat room,
Mhm.
because hopefully we can provide some of the perspective of people that maybe are of your vintage, but we're still engaged and we're still excited over some of the new stuff. And so we'd love to have you come, and doesn't cost anything to join. All you have to do is just figure out how to find us on YouTube, and that's pretty easy.
Yep.
So please come and join us. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.